And now, it's time for TJwow.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to absolutely everybody. So welcome to our Training Journal webinar. We are really pleased to have you here today. This is me, I'm your host, I'm the Deputy Editor of Training Journal, and this was a picture of me from our Training Journal Awards this year, which I would say was quite a triumph. We had a new venue, it was stunning. You can see all the pictures on our Facebook group. Go and have a look at those. Some really great times. And of course, success stories. And speaking of stories, this is a lovely quote from Jay Cross. And he said, conversation is the most powerful learning technology ever invented. And I think this is really important because that is the ethos of what we're doing today. We've got one question planned to discuss. But that's it. We don't have any more than that. The rest of it is entirely up to you guys. So please do use that chat with each other. It's really important that you use that so that you can learn from each other. You can also therefore share links to things. So if you've written a blog or you know of an article or a piece of research, please share it. And if you've written it, that's great too. Please share those. You are more than welcome to. Get to know each other. You can change the text color if you want to. You can put your Twitter handle in as part of your name, and therefore you can go and follow people if you want to. So please go ahead and use that. At the bottom of the screen, we also have a question and answer box. If you absolutely, desperately, definitely, 100% want me to see your question for one of our speakers, pop it in there and I'll place it to them. That's absolutely no problem. You can find us on #TJwow if you want to join in on Twitter and share some of your learning nuggets. All the sessions are available online on Training Journal. We've got about 2.5 years worth of recordings there, some really good stuff to go and have a look at. But now I think it's about time that we found out a little bit more about our speakers this month. We have her, RJ and Barbara. They're all on video waiting, raring and ready to go. So let's make sure we can get those videos on screen. Here we come. And let me make that a little bit bigger for everybody to see. And we are going to do some introductions. So we're going to go do a little bit of a round robin. We're going to go to her, RJ and then Babs, and find out a little bit more about them, and then we're going to jump into our question. So, let's come to you first. Let's make sure you are unmuted. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Good morning from my side. It's morning. I'm Gerard Giese from the Netherlands, and I work as the Learning Innovation Leader at a NewSpring. And a NewSpring is the name of the blended learning platform that we deliver. It's designed for training providers to design and deliver their learning journeys towards learners. And Learning Innovation Leader, they expect from me to look outside for other areas to come up with ideas and inspiration, of course, internally within the company, but also externally to share with the community. So I'm really happy to be here amongst friends, I can say.
Absolutely. I think we all know each other, which is lovely. It's nice to have new friends, but it's also great to welcome back old friends. So thank you very much. And RJ, let's come to you. Now, first of all, RJ, what time is it for you?
Well, Joe, you know, I love doing this, and I love being with my friends, of course, and I love being with you. And it's 5 a.m. in Ottawa, Canada right now. So I'll do anything, and I'll walk the desert for you, Joe. So I'm really happy to be here with you today. So just to give you a brief background of who I am, I believe I'm the business conscience of L&D. I speak to the operations, how to connect to operations, and how to connect to actual business performance, how to make learning and development do that. And this is a great topic to speak about because a lot of times we tend to stay focused within our own worlds, which is fine because we are subject experts. However, we do need to go look and discover new and unique and innovative opportunities to build learning within an organization and connect to the rest of the organization and make sure that we deliver results. And basically that's what I speak to often about. As you know, Joe, I write considerably for many publications around L&D, and written 3 books, which my latest one was the Trainer's Balance Scorecard. So I'm really happy to be here with you this morning. Even if it's 5 in the morning, I think this is going to be a great discussion.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate you getting up this early. I've done that myself, and it's not fun, but we'll make it fun for you, RJ. We'll make it worth it. And Stella's already put in the chat, lovely to see you all, and well done, RJ. So thank you. Extra special kudos for RJ on that. And Babs, let me just unmute you, Babs, and tell us a little bit, Barbara, about yourself.
Sure. Morning or afternoon or evening, everyone, depending on where you are. So I'm Barbara, but do Babs. I'm a learning innovation consultant for a consultancy called PA Consulting. And what does the title mean? Well, in practical terms, what it means is that I run a spectrum of activities, anything from helping organisations with better operating models, understanding their capabilities for this sort of new world, and designing solutions. So a spectrum of activities which can be busy. Innovation means a number of things to me, but we'll get into that detail later on. But great topic, Joe, and I look forward to getting into it.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, me too. I've been looking forward to this one all year. It's been on the calendar. I've known it's coming. So let's start with this question. Our opening question is, where should we look outside of L&D for new learning ideas? Now, I've certainly, I follow different people on Twitter. I look into different industries, watch documentaries, listen to podcasts, go to conferences, run out of breath. And there's all sorts of things that we can do in all sorts of different ways. But let's get a take from you guys on this. So again, let's start with her, then RJ, then Babs. Tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are and where we should look outside of L&D.
Maybe it's a strange answer, but everywhere, I would say. In my case, in everyday life, things pop up, ideas pop up, meeting other people from different industry helps to pop up ideas, new approaches, and then use that curiosity and try to connect the dots of different things. So, but of course I can be a bit more specific. This is a nice resource, I guess. It's written by Martin, the CEO of NewSpring. It's the Blended Learning Chef. So it's an example of how you can use the metaphor of the blended learning chef to create blended learning. Food and drink is always a good one to look at. Very fundamental, and there are lots of nice ideas from that area to get inspired by. And some might know I live in this village where this guy, Van Gogh, lived. His parents lived here, and Van Gogh created his first masterpiece here in the city where or the village where I live. So what I once did was, I thought, hey, I don't know that much about him. I live so close to all the things that he painted, where he worked. So let's dive a bit deeper into his life and work. And I presented at several conferences the story about learning from Van Gogh. And one of the principles that I came up with is that Van Gogh really looked inside the box. And I think that's a general one. Look inside the box, where you are, at which company, at which place, geographically, whatever. Look at what is close to you, what seems obvious to you, and look for the extraordinary in the ordinary, things from your daily life, from your daily surroundings. With a fresh look, they can be very useful to create innovative ideas also for L&D. So that's the one to start with.
I think that's a really great way of putting it. And one of the reasons I love going to conferences, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons I love it is usually on the train or whatever home, my brain is just buzzing with ideas because I've seen things in different ways or different people have highlighted things to me. And therefore, I'm then starting to look at what I normally do with just a slightly different angle. So I think something like that's a really great way of putting it. And that word curiosity, I'm sure we'll come back to that one. Thank you for starting us off, her. So let's come to Ajay. Ajay, tell us your thoughts on this opening question about where should we look out.
I do enjoy following a lot of people in L&D, especially the people around the table today. And I always get inspired by them. However, if I really want to get stimulated in the sense of really thinking outside the box, I will look to other sources. And even if you look at my Twitter following, or the people I follow on Twitter, apart from the great L&D people I follow, most of my follows are through other areas, whether it be in other business areas or innovation areas. For example, I follow things like Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan, Stanford, a bunch of interesting, business leaders that I feel try to break the innovation barrier. So I always look at outside the area that I'm actually in to bring new ideas into my life or into my profession. And so what I do is I do follow these people, and I do get new ideas, because what you need to do is try to find things that are successful in other areas or other domains that you believe you can adapt that may work. And allow me to say this, Joe, we are in learning and development, and for me, learning and development implies going into the unknown and becoming innovative. And so if we're not doing that and we're just sitting within our own circles, or as we like to often call the echo chamber, we're not getting any new ideas, and we're just repeating the same old processes. So my goal is to always look outside into other areas that are not always explored. And as crazy as they may seem, I just like going there, because I'll ask myself the question, how can I apply this within my world? And that's where I start.
I think that's a great question. How can I apply this in my role? Because if you go to any conference, any presentation, any webinar, listen to a podcast, read an article, it's always about, this is what I did or what I see from my perspective. And it's really up to the reader or the consumer or the attendee to go, no, that's not quite right for me. Or if I take it and turn it and squish it, that would be perfect for what I'm doing. So I think that's a really great point, Ajay. Thank you. And so, Babs, let's come to you on where should we look outside of L&D for new learning ideas.
The task of going last with this question, and the other two presenters have made some cracking points. So you asked us to consider a kind of couple of themes, but for me, because it's Christmas, I'm going to give you a little bit more than that. So I was thinking really holistically about where I go, and my manager says that he hasn't met anyone quite like me who has such a variety of things that inspire me. So I'm going to share those with you in a sort of quick fire fashion. So the area of film is a source of inspiration for me. I quite like Quentin Tarantino as a style, because he's flipped the linear storytelling process, and that's something that I take some personal inspiration from. The other area is improv. So I decide to do something once a year that really unsettles and challenges me, and I did improv a couple of years ago, and the whole notion of just working with what an audience throws at you is really deeply stimulating, and it's just amazing how I'm able to take those principles, and when I'm sat in front of a client and I think I know that what they're going to say and they throw me a curveball, it's a really useful developmental tool. It'll be no surprise to many of those that know me on this session that sports features, particularly with the advent of sports sensors, where they're able to really track performance and motivation, and that's something that's also of interest to me. Architecture is another one. We sometimes refer to ourselves as learning architects, but there's something about the very principle of what architects do, which is to give people space and light and something that they call their own. And the similarities doesn't end there, because often architects are working with some clients where they have a very narrow view about what they want, and you have to work with them, as we often do with our stakeholders, to kind of manage their expectations and ultimately give them something better. Schools is another area of delight for me, because there's something about not necessarily the instructional methods, but the way that they've crafted an experience for children to learn, with artifacts and posters and that sense of joy and delight. So I often go to my nieces and nephews' school and kind of help out and just feel curious and full of wonderment again. Retail is another environment for me. They go through massive amounts of disruption, but what they have realised, and it's analogous to L&D, is that the omni-channel approach of working with digital and the bricks and mortar has to work in order for them to survive. So instead of competing with digital and classroom, they've actually found a way to bring a very stronger proposition to the customer. Nearly there. The workforce, I often go around and kind of floor walk and just immerse myself in the very fabric of what the business does, and just hear and see about what goes on. That also gives me quite a great source of inspiration. Going to markets, borough markets, one of my favourite, just looking to see how marketers interact with customers, how they put together a very visual narrative for the products that they're selling, and just sort of generally causing delight. And the last two is brand dialogue and engagement. The sounds have shifted from where brands used to just talk at customers. Now they have to engage and lean into the conversation. And you see brands such as Nike and Adidas are kind of really strong proponents of that. And lastly, David Attenborough. If you listen to the way that he carefully constructs beautiful narrative and storytelling, that's absolutely the approach that I want to use in terms of copywriting and when engaged with video. So in the spirit of Christmas, those are my top 10.
Wow. And you were worried about going last, Babs? Gosh. Because Stella said David Attenborough is such a hero. There's been some great comments in the chat about it as well. The improv thing really got me. I'd love to have a go at improv, so I'm going to chat to you more about that a little bit later on. And I put in chat that it was like, I think I'd be good at it, but I'm worried I'd fall flat on my face. And Stella Collins says, I believe all good learning people are already good at improv because you're always having to react in the moment. So I think that's a really great point, along with absolutely everything else that you said. So there's a lot there from our speakers. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have your own thoughts on that? Do you have questions that you want to pose? I'd like to come back to her and find out a little bit more about the Van Gogh, however you want to pronounce his name, approach to things, and what you've taken from that, the element of history, and how you can apply that to your role into L&D now. So just give us a couple of...
Yeah, so the first one was, I think, inside the box, as I told you, and you can really connect different situations and stories to that. So I said I live in the village where Van Gogh worked, but it's also very close to Eindhoven, where Philips was founded. And so there's a nice story about the two brothers who founded Philips. And the one said to his brother, the one who was for sales, said to his brother, "Hey bro, I'm going to sell that many light bulbs that you aren't able to produce them." And then his brother said back to him, "That's just fine, bro, because I'm going to produce as many light bulbs that you can never sell them all." And so that's a story that they got engaged into with each other. And so they created this kind of gamification thing that really helped them grow. And why this story? If you have these stories and you all have them within your organization, that's about thinking inside the box and say, okay, what helped us really well as an organization once, and can we reuse that again? So looking at the history, at the legacy of your organization, or maybe the geographical location of your organization, and the history of that can be very useful when looking inside the box. I think the other thing that I learned was about deliberate practice and becoming really good at something. So when I thought about Van Gogh before. I thought, okay, this guy just sits before a white canvas, a blank canvas, and then has an idea in his mind and starts sketching and painting, and then he just finalizes the painting, and that's it. But in fact, it's a lot about studying. And so the first masterpiece of Van Gogh was the Potato Eaters. And before he could really create that painting, the Potato Eaters, he wrote to his brother Theo, who supported him very well. He said, I first have to paint 50 heads of people as studies, and I have to sketch their hands so that they have life in them. So he really created 50 paintings before of heads of people before he could start with the Potato Eaters. And then at the end, there are 3 versions of the Potato Eaters, and only one is the masterpiece. So I think it's very important that we keep in mind being really good at something needs deliberate practice, and that takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And sometimes in this fast-paced world, I think we don't give our learners maybe that much time to practice and to reach a good level of mastery, and we should be aware of that that is needed to reach a high level. So there are 2 of the ideas that I got from Van Gogh.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. I love how that taking that from being an artist and bringing life into something, really breathing life into that, and how that inspiration can come through into what we do. So as you were talking, I was thinking about a blog post that I wrote, and it was based on some research about the work that I do. And I probably read 10 research papers and distilled it down. And you know what? I actually did it at your conference when I spoke at your conference, and it distilled down into one sentence. And as I was saying this one sentence, I was thinking, I read 10 research papers for this.
And what is that one sentence?
But you're right. It's about putting in that effort, isn't it? Oh, the one sentence, the one sentence was you can have great communication online, similar to face, if you understand the techniques and the technology properly. There you go. And that was 10 research papers. Thanks very much. So you've done some good stuff there. And speaking of inspiration, Melissa says, I take inspiration from science, neuroscience, biology, linguistics, education, improv too, comedy, marketing, sports, doctors, diagnostics, tradesmen, creative use of available tools, politics, and Netflix, the consumer-led content. Melissa, that was a great list to follow on from Bab's list, so thank you very much for that. And I really wanted to move on to RJ at this point, because something that came up from the conversation with RJ was about this avoiding the echo chamber. Now, RJ, you and I have had a couple of kind of conversations about this before, because sometimes you kind of call out things that L&D are doing. Now, I don't always agree with you, but what's your point of view on
that? The thing with the echo chamber, sometimes it's a human nature that we like to get our ideas reinforced by people who agree with us. And I'm not a psychologist by any means, so please don't take any of my opinions seriously here for a second. But and we look for confirmation of our ideas, and when people tell us that we're doing things correctly, it confirms a bias, right? And so we move ahead with it thinking that we are fully secure in our ideas and moving forward. The problem is that when you're surrounded by people that, with all due respect, people want to make other people feel good, it's hard to challenge people to tell them that they're wrong. And it's a very difficult position to do that, because you don't want to make people look bad or feel bad, and you just want to help them succeed. And so our parents do it to us all the time. They tell us as children, yeah, you're doing a good job, when really we're doing a lousy job, and we grow up with these false securities. So an echo chamber is a little bit like that, where people start agreeing with you. And what I always try to do is I try to take a position where I even challenge myself and ask and second guess myself before. If people are agreeing with me, and there's too many people agreeing with me, then I have to wonder, why is there nobody not, disagreeing with me? Because I need to find somebody who's going to be that critic. I need to find somebody who's going to challenge me, of course, hopefully in a secure environment or secure space, where before I make the real mistake in real life. And that's what we have to be careful here. When we look for new ideas, it's great to be innovative, and I love so many ideas Babs is coming up with. I mean, the improv, oh my God, I can't see myself doing that, but it's a fantastic idea. And things like deliberate practice, where we do, we lead to sort of towards that ultimate goal of being perfect. As Hare said, it's very important that we keep doing those things, because we have to be allowed to make our mistakes to come to the right conclusions, if you understand what I'm saying. So the great successes in life who went out to look for ideas didn't look within their own environments. They actually, if you read any of these biographies, like Henry Ford all the way up to Jack Dorsey and with Twitter and all this kind of stuff, they've all went out and did different things to learn where they're going to make their mistakes. And even when they had their success, they made several mistakes to get to that perfection. And they didn't look within their own environment. They looked outside that environment to correct those mistakes. And so we have to look outside to get the new ideas, and then we have to be allowed to make those mistakes to move forward. Now, the echo chambers, and don't get me wrong, I do encourage people to get into their personal learning networks and talk to others, but make sure that personal learning network has a ground rule to allow people to say, in more polite terms possibly, but that's incorrect or you're wrong, because you need to be challenged. And allow me to say this one last point, Joe, is that unfortunately we worked, and even though I'm an independent consultant organization, works independently from all others, and I control this organization, when I work with clients, corporate clients especially, we live in a world of conformity. Your business leaders do not want you to necessarily take unnecessary risks, because they want things to move forward in a proper fashion. However, at the same time, they tell you to look for new things. So it's almost like a mixed message. You're telling you to look for new things, but also conform with what we're doing already. So sometimes it is a bit of a challenge with an organization to do this. But if you can, if you're looking for new ideas, create a, if you want to call it, I'm going to drop the word echo chamber, create a network of people where, and I have this around me myself, I practice what I preach. So I have people around me that I trust, I highly respect, and when they say to me, Ajay, I'm not sure that's going to work, or, did you think of this, or you're going to fall flat on your face if you do that. It's like, okay, then explain to me why. At least I know you're telling me something that is of value, because if I have 10 people around me telling me that, yeah, Ajay, that's a fantastic idea, then I know something is wrong. So you have to be very careful when you get within a group of people, and always question the value of that you're getting from others. And I'm not trying to, by the way, I'm not trying to discount the value I'm getting from others. Just be careful and be diligent and cautious about the value you're getting from them.
And of course, my humorous personality has to now say, as a joke, I disagree with all of that, Ajay. I'm sorry. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a bad comedian, as I tweeted at OEB last week. But Ajay, no, you're absolutely right, I think, and there's been lots of stuff coming through in the chat about this. About so Kostakis, and I apologise if I'm not pronouncing your name right, says the problem with L&D is we have too many folk with their head in the sand. If Guru Bob said it, then it must be right. Stella said positive cognitive bias is a problem when we're surrounded by people who all believe the same. That's why it's good to get outside of the L&D community, and it's why we're having this conversation. And I think you're absolutely right about that, and being able to have that challenge. And that's why we've had that conversation where I've said to you, I don't think you're right, Ajay, and for these reasons, and let's discuss it. And it's always been a respectful conversation, and that's the difference. And there's another quote I wanted to pull from the chat. Here we go. It was Stella again. It says disagreement and discussion can lead to great new places. And I love that. And that comes back to innovation, doesn't it?
I always said, and I might be completely wrong here, but I think technology has fed into the fact that we like to surround ourselves with people that are like-minded, and we see messages that correspond to our views. So we get put in this corner subconsciously where we are being reinforced of the things that we believe are right. And the problem is that when we get into discussions, and we see this, of course, I live right next to the biggest economy in the world with what's happening down there in the United States, and I see friends who families have been broken up because they're so in their corners. But I'm digressing here. They're so positioned where they believe they're right. They're not even challenging each other anymore. But Stella's correct. You have to have discussions where people are going to disagree with you. And that gets you to start thinking. And again, what are we? We're in learning, and we're trying to help people to think. And thinking is about thinking critically. Thinking critically means looking for new opportunities and options. And that's where all learning takes place, not when we agree. If we agree, why do we need learning? I mean, if we all know what we know, why do we need to move forward?
Yeah. Some really great stuff, some lovely comments coming through. Barbara said, I love the term conspiracy of convenience from Nigel Harrison, who speaks to some of the ways that L&D are interacting with what they're being asked to do. And it's going back to that order taker. So like somebody runs in, I want time management for my team. We go, yeah, sure, next Monday. And we don't get to the bottom of it necessarily. Now, we do have to be careful, and this is some of the discussion we've had, Ajay, around the narrative of L&D that we see, and it's confirmation bias. We see what we want to see. Just before we move on to Babs, I've got a great question we're going to come up and discuss with Babs in just a second. I did want to come back to her, because her in the chat you put conformity and innovation is a hard combination. Tell us a bit more about your thoughts on that.
I really understand this point of view. If a lot of companies, organizations say they want or need to be innovative, but then at the end, if somebody tries something new, they want conformity because that feels safe. And I met quite a few people in organizations, also young people who have this profile of being creative, and they are a minority, and it's often very hard for them to find their place and to find ways to use that creativity and to bring in those other points of view. That's a hard situation. So we need also people who see this is happening and can support the people who have these new ideas from the inside and from the outside, so that they will find their way to innovation. And I'm not sure how Ajay handles that or what his ideas are to change it, but he has an idea.
Thank you very much. And Michelle Parry Slater, who I've worked with a little bit, who's at MIPS1608, I think, on Twitter, something she said really resonated with me a couple of years ago. It says revolution and evolution, and some companies are ready for revolution, and some companies are only ready for evolution and have to take those steps a little bit more slowly. So some good points there. Thank you. Let's move on to Babs, who's been very quiet and very patient, waiting for us to come back to her, Babs. So Babs, you mentioned earlier on in that kind of opening part about what inspires you. One of the many things you said was architecture. And if anybody's ever been on Twitter and done #lookup, there's some lovely photos that you can see. And Jan said, I like the architect idea in chat. He said it's a challenge to translate the idea from a client into a tangible visual. Tell us a bit more about that aspect of it, Babs, because whether we have clients as a consultancy or internal L&D.
In fact, the reason that I actually got into sort of liking architecture or going to see the architect in the first place is that I'm a Londoner, and if anyone follows me on social media, then I'm a proud Londoner as well. And I just love the way that you get frictionless design, where you kind of get old and new, which are butt up next to each other and work incredibly well. So that's kind of what got me into it in the first place. And then periodically, I challenge myself to think, what is it I'm doing? And I actually write a blog about, what I'm doing, and I think it's really important for us, for all of the reasons that I've already stated by my fellow presenters, to really keep yourself sharp about what I'm doing, because people seem to get sort of very caught up in titles, etc., and actually that's not the whole story. So I love architecture, and I basically was watching a sort of TV program and sort of saw this sort of disconnect, which resonated very well with me, which is, you know, the client said that they wanted this, and then you've got the sort of the technical expertise of the architect. And so I thought, let me go and spend some time with them and sort of understand a little bit more about it. But these people, they study incredibly hard to understand how space and light works, and that's essentially what they're giving to clients, because you're never going to get a situation where anyone's saying that I want a dark, oppressive space. I mean, it's just not a thing. So they take the essence of what a client wants, and then they translate that by spending time with them, having empathy. And this is going back to my point about innovation. You can't have innovation in a bubble. It absolutely has to have empathy that sits underneath it to actually make it work. And then they're in constant dialogue with the client, often with the client opposing some of their views, but they find this happy medium of sort of showing plans and walking people around, drawing lines to sort of show people in a very low fidelity way. So, you know, I've sort of taken some of those tips myself, because you can't always convince people using a very auditory thing. You've got to show people, and you need to understand what some of the pressing points are, so that you can then marry up their requests. So that's why the sort of field of architecture, I think, is very relevant.
That's really interesting, and you're bringing in lots of different things there, including, you know, a marketeer might disagree with me,
Yeah,
and might
I
not
mean, you
like
could
what I'm
say
going to
that.
say, but it's almost marketing your ideas,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I see where you're going with that. I think with the architect, they spend a lot of time around the client. They understand them. You know, they will ask why they wanted to buy the home, and it's framed as a home rather than a building or dwelling or whatever. And they really get to connect and understand that person. And sometimes we don't do that. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, so the key part there is connection with the person, and you could expand that to team or group or company a little bit further. That's a really, really interesting point, because I think we've all probably had experiences where maybe we haven't done that as well as we could have. Perhaps we're in the middle of delivering our training session, for instance, and by getting to know people in the training session, we then go, that would have been useful to know beforehand or at the beginning.
Which sort of speaks to the field of UX as well, user experiences, that you never ever ask people what they want. And Stella can sort of come in with some of her views about this as well, is that, quite frankly, sometimes we don't know what we want, and I think it's a bit of a loaded question when you sort of ask people, and therefore you're making their expectations that you're going to give them what they want. Is ask them what they need, and that's a fundamental shift that we need to do in learning. Don't ask people what they want, ask them what they need. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's that good old-fashioned quote of Henry Ford: if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. I love trying that one out. That's a great quote. Okay, so some really good stuff there. Thank you very much. And in the chat window, Stella says showing people really helps. We just designed some e-learning, and it was our method of design: create something, comment, challenge, test and change. Maybe that's a hint of agile in there, if that's your thing. And her has said empathy. There's a key word, very important. And Jan says listening and translating are the key skills. So I'm going to come to you on a question in a moment, but actually what Jan's just said about listening and translating, whilst we can't see properly what's behind you, tell us a little bit about that poster. I think that segues nicely in here. So if her moves, it says shut up and the bit behind her head, it says listen, shut up and listen. Tell us about that.
I should change that poster maybe one day. But it's a piece of art from a Belgian artist, and the grey background are also words, and it's filled with words blah 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 blah. So that's also on the poster. It's about it's a piece of art from a Belgian artist. It's a lady, and She's fighting her fight because she is absolutely sure that she is the unofficial daughter of the Belgian king, of the Belgian king, and now they are struggling with their fight. They want to bring the Belgian king to court to give his DNA so that it can be ruled out forever. But and so she uses her art to as a source. No, she uses the frustration as a source to her art. So that's what this poster is about. Not to defend to offend you all.
I love maybe we can all use our frustration in our art of L&D. That's what I'm going to say on that one. Let's go to a question from Kostakis. He says, is working out loud, WOL, an effective process for people to adopt? Or do we need to be wary of this phenomenon as some try to push their views?
Oh yeah, it depends. It's good question with a well thought of question. So well, I think if it's with the right intention, and who could say it are the right intentions, but if people work out loud and share their approaches and their work, then they are out there for other ones to have a look at it and to decide could it be useful for me also. So if nobody shares anything, it would be a poor world. So it can all be very interesting, inspiring sources for innovation or for different approaches. I think also there it is about, if you focus on those who apply working out loud only within your bubble, then it won't work that much, and then it will be the big bubble, echo chamber, etc. What we talked about. But at your end, it gives real good opportunities to look at people who work out loud from different industries or different professions, and in that sense, it can be really helpful. But yeah, I think it's also about clear thinking, like Ajay said, deep thinking, and not. I really like the Guru Bob, term. Who is saying what, and what does it really mean, and how can I apply it? And okay, if it works in that area, can I just copy and paste it in my area? No, I think inspiration is one, and it's very nice, and then clear thinking is the other thing, and also being brave and experimenting is the other thing, and so also being open for failure and learning from that. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Heron. I really like that, because for me, working out loud is exactly that. It's me sharing, this is how I did something, or how I'm doing something. I might not have finished it yet. This is all the places I went wrong and what I've learned from it, so that hopefully if you're doing something similar, you can get there quicker without kind of making the same mistakes that I have. Stella says,
like you say,
oh, sorry, go
ahead. Might give you feed forward instead of feedback. That people tapping in and say, okay, did you think of this, or this is my take on it, or hey, maybe you're heading a bit in the wrong direction. So also in that sense can be very helpful.
Absolutely. And even it could be something as simple as, this is a really, really simple example. I'm looking at buying a new laptop. So I just put out on Twitter, hey guys, what do you reckon? What are your recommendations? Got loads of suggestions, loads of advice, loads of questions to ask myself. Some of which was like, yeah, I kind of know that already. And some of that was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Or I didn't even know that existed, and be able to go and research it and come up with a conclusion. So that's a really simple example. Thank you. So, Ajay, what are your thoughts on this working out loud element, and with regard to what Kostakis is saying about, is it someone trying to push their views and masquerading it as WOL?
So I'd be happy to. So working out loud, and let me qualify what I'm about to say, and Joe, you know this, and her
Thank you. I
possibly
will do
because
that.
we've met so many times and we've known each other for a number of years. I don't push my views to be right. I push my views to get people to think critically. And I think that gets misinterpreted because people come across that I'm being too harsh and too direct. But if I'm not that direct, I don't get people to think and challenge me. And so let me go back to your question, Joe, then, is that these terms, work out loud, and all these jargon that we like to put out to make ourselves feel better in L&D, to me is things that we already do. When we're doing our work and we're developing our things, we should actually be sharing it with others. And not just because we're in learning and development, just because we're human beings. If we're not sharing with others and getting input and insight from other areas at any given point in time, then we're doing something wrong. I never want to be called right. I grew up with a father who was a PhD in microwave physics. He always thought he was right. And maybe I have a bit of that bad habit. But at the end of the day, I try to put myself in a place where if I'm putting something out there, I don't really care what I call it, if it's working out loud. I just put it out there because I want people I trust around me to say to me, Ajay, yes, that's a great idea, and give me some evidence why it's a great idea. Just don't tell me it's a great idea, and prove to me that I'm doing the right thing. Because that's really what, if you want to call it working out loud for any better terms, then fine. But be careful when you do this, because the world is not a forgiving place, especially in your work environment. And if you do make a mistake, sometimes it's hard to recover. So, and let me just share with you a live example of work out loud. I teach, as you know, Joe, in a Master's of Accounting program and the MBA program here at a local university. And I tell my students, I said, one thing your goal is to do is to find or discover something either I don't know or when I'm wrong, and point it out in class. Because if you do that, then I believe I've confirmed that you are actually learning. You're actually finding things that I don't know. And I don't know everything, but if I'm the teacher, I probably know a little more than you. And if you're pushing yourself to find more than I know, that's fantastic. And I want you to prove I'm wrong, or it's something that I don't know. And that's part of my working out loud side of things.
Yeah. I love that, Ajay, and that's when the teacher becomes the student and the student becomes the teacher, and it's perfect. I love that. And Stella's agreeing with that as well. Thank you, Stella. So, Babs, before we come off of webcam and go into our reflection piece, what are your thoughts around this working out loud, learning from failure? Can we change our minds? Where are you at on that one?
Which is that your culture will actually define how you can do that properly. So it's a bit of an oxymoron, but sometimes I work out loud in a very specific way, which might not be very visible to some people. So you just have to be very careful about that. But it's something that I've done even before the sort of the term really came about, because it's a UX principle, which is that you learn and ideate, and you just keep on doing that. And you know, for kind of rapid prototyping, whether it be digital or classroom. And it's the essence of getting to understand something better, not necessarily for it to be part of the product, but for you to learn as you go along. So, you know, as L&D professionals, it seems, you know, criminal that we wouldn't be doing that anyway, and so that we'd be eating our own dog food. So yes, I agree with the approach, but I do echo some of the caution around, you know, your environment and your culture actually supporting that. But you can still find ways to do that in a very stealth way.
Brilliant. Thank you, Babs. And her has just shared in the chat that tomorrow, A New Spring are hosting the first Learning Failures United in the Netherlands, working out loud from failures and what we've learned from them. So there's a hashtag you can go and follow. So I'm definitely going to copy and paste that, her. Thank you, and make a note of that one, because I think that looks really interesting. And her actually hosted a fishbowl discussions. We had a little discussion. I was very proud to be one of the speakers about learning from failure. So we've kind of picked up threads of that throughout. So I'm definitely going to keep in touch on that one on Twitter tomorrow. Thank you. Okay, what we are going to do now is go into our reflection piece. Our speakers are staying here. Don't worry, they're not going anywhere, but we are going to turn off the webcam. So let's just wave a visual goodbye. And we're going to go into our reflection piece and have a think about, from all of what we've discussed so far, what are we actually going to do? So we're going to practice the text tool first of all. Please go and click on the T text tool. So yours is on the left of the screen. My example here is on the right. Once you've clicked on the text tool, you can click on the screen. Just type in your name. You heard me typing there, but can't see anything. Then click again, and it will reveal your name to everybody. So please go and do that for me. And if at any point you happen to type over the top of somebody else's name, you don't have to worry, because the very first tool in the toolbox, if you click that, you can go and pick up and move your writing around. So let's go and have a little play with that. Whilst you are doing that, Babs had put in the chat window, I don't get why failure has such a bad connotation in L&D. It's where you really get a moment of truth. I think that's very well stated there, Babs. In fact, I don't think it's just L&D. I think it's in lots of places, but really well said. So what else have we got? We've got loads of you writing on here. Yes, you can delete things as well, as you've just discovered, and you can delete other people's text. So just be a little bit careful with that one. But it looks like most of you have got that working. Now, Lakishma, it looks like you are on a mobile device. You don't have the text tool, Lakishma, but if you want to type in chat, I can put it onto the whiteboard for you. So that is no problem. And if you can't get it working, we'll just use the text box. No problem at all. So let's actually think about this. We've had a great discussion today. 3 fabulous speakers in RJ, Babs and her. What are the things that you're thinking about that you're going to do, either in the office right now, or it could be on Monday? It could be what you're going to do at home tonight. It could be what you're actually going to think, actually next year I'm going to implement this at work. Just share, what are you going to do after today? You've been here, we've had a great conversation. On that whiteboard, click that T-text tool. What's the point? What is it you're going to do, having been in So some of the things coming through, making sure to get feedback on my ideas out of the echo chamber. Love that, because sometimes it might mean we have to explain things a bit more to people to give them a context, but also it means they've got a different point of view. I love doing this with my other half. He's not in L&D at all. And sometimes he just says the most insightful thing and I go, never thought about it that way. That's a really good point. So even something like that can be very useful. What else have we got? Look inside the box and see how to be more efficient. There's different ways of doing things as always. I'm going to join a Spanish drama group, improv in another language. I will definitely learn from that. I know who that was. That was Stella. That's scary, but great. I expect a blog on that, Stella, to tell us about that. Seek an opportunity to fail in a safe environment. Stop asking what people want. Watch more Tarantino films. Google Van Gogh or Van Gogh. Read about Van Gogh. Look at the potential of my team. We can do more. Go look for Guru Bob. Thank you. Make a conscious effort to get out of the echo chamber and seek out different opinions. Absolutely brilliant. And what I found interesting, was it last year? Oh gosh, it can't have been the year before, I hope. I went to a sales conference and a marketing conference, nothing to do with L&D, completely different. And it's interesting what was different and how many of the conversations were the same about we should rename our industry, we've got a bad reputation, we need to do this better, we need a seat at the table. Really interesting to see what was very similar there. Explore some Greek architecture, lovely. Did I miss anything here? I thought I saw something else go up. No, I don't think I have. So let's go to our speakers and just see what their kind of summary is, what their thoughts are from what you've shared. And just before I do that, I will put up what Lakishma has said, because I don't want to miss that out. Lakishma says, taking a moment to think on their needs and the ways to get what they need, not what they want. Thank you. So Babs, let's come to you first. What's your thoughts on what people are sharing here and your summary of today's conversation?
Looking at the whiteboard, I can see it's very purposeful. That's my first reaction, and which is good. I think in terms of a summary of today, we recognise the challenge that we have in L&D. I don't need to describe that. I think we all know what it is. And I think my sort of summary would be that you can't have innovation in a bubble unless you understand people, how people learn, and we're not talking about learning styles for the avoidance of doubt, and the context of your organisation, and then as we've already discussed, there's a whole host of things that you can take for inspiration and apply those basically back to your craft.
Love that, Babs. Thank you so much. And Ajay, what are your thoughts on what's been shared here in your summary of today?
Just in general, I think you just need to get out of your environment and look elsewhere. That's really the message, and I'll tell you what I do. So people always say to me, well, Ajay, you probably don't get called in by a lot of learning or training departments. So I said, no, I don't expect to, and I never have. And they said, well, who calls you? I said, the business leaders call me to speak to the learning development department. And the first thing I do is when I go into learning and development with an organization is I get them out of their environment. I take them on a field trip within the organization, and I get them to speak to other departments within the organization. And I think it was Baz who said, tell them, find out what they need, and talk to them and learn about their business. And this will open your mind into what actually people need or want for their environment, because human beings don't deliberately learn typically. We learn all the time, and what we need to do is figure out how we need ourselves in learning development to learn in areas that deliver results or solutions that people want. And we can't do that sitting in our cubicles thinking about creating the greatest e-learning course. We need to go out and find out what people actually want and stimulate our brains to make sure we address that need. And that's what you need to do. Get out of your environment and learn something new.
Thank you so much, Ajay. And Herb, the very last point goes to you.
Thank you. Very quick one then. I like what is on the whiteboard, and I would say all participants, please have a second look at it and pick the one that is least appealing to you and apply that one.
Ooh, I'm liking that one. Oh, there you go. That's my absolute key takeaway from this, Herb. Thank you so much. I love that. And I can't believe, once again, we're at the end of another session. Thank you so much to our brilliant, wonderful, insightful speakers. We have Herdreeson, we have Ajay Pangakar, and we have Barbara Thompson. Please do go follow them on Twitter. Please go and connect with them on LinkedIn. I know they would love to have more conversations with you about this. And let me tell you, first of all, you can continue this conversation on Twitter. Go and share your little learning nuggets. Go and share what it is that you are thinking. You can register for our next webinar, and we'll have next year's webinars up fairly soon as well. And the very last one of the year, it's the virtual Christmas party. Oh yes, if you've ever been on the virtual Christmas party TJwow webinar, you know it is absolutely great fun. We do all sorts of weird, crazy activities and have some fun. If you haven't been on it, why not? Please do come and join us 4 p.m. UK time on the 19th of December. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our speakers are amazing, but you know what? It's you guys that make it amazing too. It's your conversation and your questions that really make these absolutely special. So thank you very much. Hopefully see you on the 19th of December and definitely next year. Bye bye everybody.